Let's talk real estate for La Paz, Baja California, sir, in Mexico. In this video, I'm going to share what we learned about real estate here in La Paz. I'm going to do a little bit of a comparison about buy versus rent. I'm going to run some numbers and example. We're going to talk about the pros and cons of real estate. And then lastly, we're going to throw out our recommendations. Now, let me start by saying I'm not a real estate professional, never been in that business, but real estate's been a hobby of ours for over 30 years, so I always look everywhere we go. So here's a couple of things that I learned from talking to some of the locals here, some expats, and a bit of the articles that I've been reading. First of all, most people down here, if they're gonna buy a property, they buy it cash. And why is that? Because nobody down here will hold a mortgage on a property. I did find one place that will mortgage to foreigners down here, but they charge like 15% interest. And I think if you read the small print, you never want to miss a payment. So like I said, most people buy cash. Now take a look at some of the prices of real estate around here. I know I can't buy it for cash. So talk with some expats. What a lot of people do is they do a second mortgage on their house at home, and that's how they pay cash down here. The other thing I learned, I guess by Mexican law, foreigners are not allowed to own property within 50 kilometers of a waterfront and 100 kilometers of a border. Now there is a way around that because a bank trust can hold the title. Now there's a fee for that. You're still the ownership of the property. The bank trust just owns the title. But that fee comes to around $400 to $500 US a year that you have to pay. Now I can't pronounce some of these words. Now I can't pronounce some of these words, but that bank trust, it's called the fideicomisario or something like that. That's their name for a title here. So you have to organize some sort of bank trust to do that. Now that will take a lawyer to do that, which is another fee. Now we've actually never gone through the process of getting property in Mexico, but if there's a different way of getting title within these parameters, just comment below so we can share that around. So the closing costs for buying a property can add up. So you're gonna have to take into consideration that sales tax will cost you between 4 and 10%, I believe, on which property it is. But your closing costs could run up to about 5,000 US also. So these are prices you need to know if you're thinking about buying property. But don't take my word for it. Find out for yourself if you're gonna think about doing it. Take a close look into it before assuming that it's like the US or Canada. And one thing to be careful about when you're thinking about buying down here is the advertisement's not always what you get. I'll show you a few clips of some things that I've seen around here. Plus, you have to find out what your neighbors like. I'll show you another clip about that. Now, what about renting in Mexico? Well, that's pretty easy. Airbnb is about the easiest way to find a place, but you can find stuff online, and most of those places will do about a 1-year lease also. The one recommendation I do have for renting is if you're gonna relocate down here and you wanna go year-round, I would recommend you do a short-term rental first because you need to find out the location you're gonna be renting in. The neighbors can be very different around here. So if you do decide to get a place like with a 1-year lease for renting, and all of a sudden you find out the neighbors aren't quite like what you expect them to be, there is no governing body to complain to here. You can't just go somewhere and say there's too many barking dogs or uncontrolled garbage. There's nobody to manage that except for the landlord and the neighbor. So I did find out one person who was trying to get out of their lease for a similar situation like that. Couldn't get out, still owe them all the money. That's one thing to be careful of with renting. But short-term rental, piece of cake, you just move next month. So the next thing is, do you buy or do you rent if you want to come to Mexico here for long-term travel? Well, I think I'm going to take you home here so I can run the numbers there and I'll do a scenario for you. Okay, let's go home. I've come up with a little bit of a scenario I'm going to show you here. But first, I want to remind you, I'm not telling you what to do. You need to do your own research. This is just some food for thought. So let's take a look at buying versus renting. And I know what some of you are going to say. Renting's just throwing away your money. But if you stick around to the end, I'll show you something here. So this is a 2-bedroom condo in Presa del Sol, which is a community that's right close to the Malecon. This one's listed at $549,000 US. Now, some of the costs that's going to be associated with buying it, you're going to be looking at acquisition tax and closing costs, 4 to 10%. I used 4%, just a plug number. Legal fees, you're going to do surveys, you're going to do appraisals, and some of these other costs, I don't know what it's going to be like, but I wanted to put some numbers together to base what the total cost would be at roughly $590,000. Now I'm going to base this over a 20-year period, so let's divide it by 20, divide that by 12 to get a monthly cost in order to base an apples-to-apples comparison of how much rent you would pay. So that's about $2,457, so I'm going to base it off $2,400 a month rent. That's pretty good rent because the place we rented was $1,300 a month Canadian. That's only $1,000 US a month. And this one's going to be $2,400 US a month. So you get a pretty nice place, I think. So there's your cost buying versus renting. Now let's take a look at how much it's going to cost every year. So these are some of the yearly costs if you purchase that condo down there. You're going to run into the title through the bank trust. Now there might be a better way to get a title. Maybe you become a permanent resident. I don't know. That's up to you. Property tax, I'm just putting a plug number in for that based off conversations. There'll be HOA fees. I don't know what that'll be, but I'm guessing $250 a month. Gas, electrical, and AC, and yes, you're going to need air conditioning. Insurance, now cost of living is going to be the same whether you're renting or you're buying. You got to do things while you're down there. So that number is, I'm going to base it off $2,000 a month for all year. There's your $24,000 on both sides for your yearly cost. So now your yearly cost, if you bought the place, it's going to be about $30,000. If you're renting, your yearly cost is going to be about $52,800. Now I know some of you say what they're saying, like renting is going to be like throwing away your money, but it's not. Let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at the income required. So if you bought the place, you'd put $590,000 down on it. It's got to come from somewhere. So either you have the cash or you're going to use your principal residence to get a second mortgage. If you rent, you got no money coming out the door to start with. Income from your cash, if you bought the place, you're not making any income because all your money is sitting in that place. If you're renting, that money, the $590,000, you could invest it. Now, I know there's pros and cons with investing, but let me get to that next. So if you invested it and you get 10% off your money per year, the amount of money you would get is about $58,900 per year. Your costs are only $52,800, so you'd actually profit $6,000 a year. You wouldn't have to make any money to live. Now the pros and cons with that. With purchasing the place. Is the value of the property going to go up over the years? Now, it's not like US and Canada. You know, we're talking Mexico here. Can it go up? Yes. Can it go down? Yes. You don't know what the situation's going to change like year to year. Here's an example of a property where a situation that nobody would have ever guessed. Imagine if you had invested in this one. Here's an example. Take a look at the hotel behind me. Now this hotel had a dispute with the employees and the union representing them. And what did the owner do? He decided to close the doors instead of negotiating. That was back in 2006 and the hotel's never reopened. And imagine if you bought into a complex where the owner did the same thing. What would happen if you could never sell or never get out of your investment? Now, investing your money comes with pros and cons also, because is the market going to go up? It might. Is the market going to go down? It might. But if you take a look at the history in the last 100 years, the market goes up and down like a rubber band, but it always ends up going up. So again, that's personal comfort, whether you're comfortable having your money sitting in a place that you bought in another country, or if you're comfortable investing it somewhere. That's totally up to you. But by renting, you could actually make enough money to cover your complete cost of living by just investing it. If you have it tied up in your place and you need that money, you need to sell that place to access the money. So to me, that comes with a little bit of risk. Now, the cash is tied up in the purchase. If you need access to that cash, or if something changes and you need to sell, well, then you could be waiting quite a while in order to get that money. Because I was told down there, sometimes selling a place can take 9 to 12 months. So by renting, you got the flexibility that when you decide it's not for you anymore, or if conditions change, you just stop paying the rent and move. But if you own the place, there's consideration of disposing of it. So a lot of fees come with that also. Anyhow, this is just our opinion of what it's like to buy versus rent in this area. Of course, like I said, you gotta do the research and make the decision for what's best for you. In our opinion, I would much rather rent than buy, because we love the idea of having the flexibility to change our minds or go somewhere else at the drop of a dime. It's only a 1 month notice. Anyhow, hopefully that helps you out. I don't know. It's just our opinion. Have a good day. Have a good week. Enjoy 2024. Now let's go to the next country.